and welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 101. And we are entering the 100s, or proceeding into them rather, by doing a little record label month for the month of April. We have an extra Monday, basically, the way the weeks fell. So we have two themed episodes this month. So we're going to do two record labels. And first up is Ill-Advised Records, which is a release label. They do a bunch of stuff, which we'll talk about, but by Chris Cote, who is in Toronto, I believe. And they focus on a variety of dark lo-fi music. So, for example, today we'll do like dark mall soft, dark hip hop, lo-fi, and just that sort of horror aesthetic that we tend to really like here. So this was suggested by you. So how did you come across them? They have a pretty large YouTube presence, like 50,000 subscribers, which is, I feel like, a lot in these kind of niche
for
genres.
Niche things. Yeah. And that was how I found out about it, was through the almighty algorithm recommending it to me. They're very savvy at like establishing their presence on YouTube, because they do things like the thumbnails. They'll be like, it'll be a parody of the lo-fi girl, writing at her desk, but it's like, she's haunted and there's ghosts in the windows, or it's very Junji Ito influenced.
They literally have a tape, I think, called like Junji Ito Beats, I think is one of their releases.
Yeah. And that's sort of the aesthetic, is very like analog horror, very J horror / manga horror, and pretty much everything that's sort of cool and trendy, creepypasta and all the sort of emerging trends in horror. And they put out a lot of material, and it's pretty cool to see that people are like taking lo-fi hip hop in a direction like this. Because like, that's the, if there's a stereotype for lo-fi hip hop, it's that it's so, saccharine, sentimental, nice and wholesome and very inoffensive. And they're like, but wait, it can be so much more.
What if you're trapped in a mall and dying at the same time? But yeah, it's interesting. I think, like you said, very savvy. I think there's a lot of interesting additional like content on the YouTube channel. So there's like behind the scenes. There's one that's just an 1.5 hour stream of just like, here I am in my DAW making a beat, which you don't really get from artists a lot, because your artist is dated, who is the same as the person who runs the label. It's the same person. So he's like, making a dated beat, basically, and like really goes into like 1.5 hours of detail of how he likes to master all the different components of a drum beat. And you just kind of don't get that a lot. I don't think, other people really release that kind of tutorials. And also just behind the scenes, because it is a very DIY label. Yeah. So it's like, here's how I press tapes, because they don't put in orders of cassettes. They kind of make them, because the overhead's much lower. So if you want to release a lot of little niche tapes, you can't really always putting in these orders of like, I need 500 pressing minimum or whatever. Yeah,
that's the thing, right? Yeah, you don't want to wind up with boxes of merchandise in your house. Who would do that? That's terrible.
Yeah, who would? So he goes into like, I print out all the little J cards and everything, and make all the cassettes. And it's also very funny because, of course, it's the internet. So there's all these people in the comments like, actually, a professionally mastered cassette can only be done on an HX Pro, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I think you're missing the point of the DIY and the genre, man.
I want DIY with professional manufacturing standards.
Yeah, DIY. I bought myself my own.
Yeah.
It's just very funny to me. But overall, it's really cool. And yeah, it's very prolific, a pretty good sized artist stable. Yeah, if you look at the artists on the list on their website, or I guess associated with on Spotify, it's like 25-ish, I think. And yeah, they just release like mixes, albums, all kinds of stuff. And I think it'll be fun to dig into. And also, staying on top of SEO, as we always do, Ross, this episode will come out the day after Easter. So we're doing Halloween music.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little undead themed episode for this undead themed holiday.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, now that I think about it, because this is a personal DIY label, it has that, personal touch, which a contrast to like Lo-Fi Girl and Chill Hop, which are more corporate and more like the artists just come out of the void and they're just names, and we don't like, there's no peek behind the scene. It's all very impersonal, right? Like, I feel like, when I listen to Chill Hop or Lo-Fi Girl, it's just like, I mean, some of them, like, I think Lo-Fi Girl and Chill Hop both, they release albums from individual artists, but they don't really like develop them to the extent that, you know, ill-advised is doing this. One thing also, they are also releasing VSTs, I think, which are plugins you add into a digital audio workstation to, you know, create beats or add reverb or do some other kind of effect. And I find that really interesting that they're like getting into that as well, like that whole dark art of I mean, they're like guitar pedals, right? Like you just keep collecting them to add new and weirder effects to shit, you know. It's I imagine a lot of musicians get addicted to just getting the best VSTs.
they could. I think also, like, it's not really a merchandise or, I don't know, revenue stream or whatever you want to call it that you really see, because that is very common other genres. So I mostly can think of like guitar, but it is extremely common for like somebody who's like a famous guitarist or shredder to sell like, here's a tone pack for this DAW, so that it's like all my amp settings, it's all my virtual settings and stuff, so that when now you can sound like this guitarist, right? Like pick one. And they generally brand it with their name, and it's like, you know, $100 or $200 and stuff. So you see that a lot, but I don't think I've ever really seen that from anybody we've done here, which is interesting, because I feel like if a very famous vaporwave producer sold like, here's my phaser pack or whatever.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, I don't know. It's just interesting that I've never seen that before, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
They also do a lot of stuff. So he has like the Dark Door, which is a serial zine. I don't know if they're still doing it. There's at least one volume for sale.
4 issues. Yeah. It looks like.
Yeah. 4. Yeah. It looks like that's right. And they have like apparel and stuff, of course, Void apparel. So yeah, so just kind of doing a lot around this image in this scene, and it's
and like looking at their YouTube channel, a lot of their mixes, which they grab from different albums, are themed around like popular indie horror video games, like World of Horror, Fear and Hunger. Yeah, so I really like that they're like, aha, you like this kind of thing. Well, here's some music that's themed after it, or like thematically appropriate for this particular game, or also like the Weather Channel, like, you know, fucking Night Vale, and it's pretty neat. Yeah,
it's really cool. So I think I do just want to get into the music, but definitely all the links to all this will be in the show notes. So check it out. I think if you like what we're about to talk about, you'll find a lot of other stuff you like. And if you don't, there's so much variety that I would definitely check out this whole huge discography.
Oh yeah.
And that was from track 3, Attention Shoppers, off our first album today, which is Dead Mall by Ghostwave. And this album is interesting because you sort of talked about how they make themed mixes where they pull from a bunch of albums and put together a mix. That's sort of what this is, but like in reverse, but not really. But it's advertised as like a curated and edited selection of tracks from the Dead Mall mixes, which are a series of mixes on their YouTube channel. So it's kind of going from all these mixes down to like a best of. And it is, as you heard, dark mall soft, which is kind of exactly what you'd expect, but also interesting that I don't think I've really run into it before. So this track in particular I picked because I think it has like the most in terms of like pitch shifted, slow down vocals you sort of expect, but a lot of like warbling tape delay and static and everything. Like a much creepier, more explicitly creepy approach to Mallsoft. Like Mallsoft, we've always talked about being like slightly unsettling through like an uncanny, unfamiliar familiarity, whereas this is much more themed upon like a horror lo-fi aesthetic.
Yeah. Everything is just slightly wrong, but like more so than a typical Mallsoft. Like Mallsoft, it's more laid back. It's more about the ennui and just kind of like the absence of, the absence of others, the absence of familiarity. This is like, it's very off kilter. Like the record player is about to break down any second. Something's seriously wrong, and you just don't know where or when it's going to break down. It's got a really interesting nervous energy to the album, and that is kind of a through line throughout all of the tracks, which I found really interesting. And it's really fun it's more active than like a Mallsoft album usually is. And it's a real interesting tension.
Yeah, and it hits that right away. So I picked track 3 largely for the vocals, but this sort of like unsettling, warbling, everything's kind of breaking down is almost immediately on track 1, Warped Lobby. And if you look at the track titles, there's like a clear narrative progression, at least what they call them. It says Warped Lobby, Dead Reflections, Attention Shoppers. So we're wandering around our mall. It's getting worse and worse. And then track 4 is Endless Escalator. And I really, really like this track. It'll probably be the outro sample for this episode.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a little more ambient. Some of those vocals kind of go away.
Yeah.
So to me, it feels a little more ambient. Like everything else is kind of leaving. But then there's like this unsettling percussion, which I think are like fucked up sleigh bells. Because they have like a shaking pattern to them. So there's some sort of shaken auxiliary percussion. And I thought sleigh bells because of like making fun of Christmas or something, like Christmas at the mall. And then like there's melodies ever, but they're like really kind of like creepy and tinny.
Oh, yeah.
And then this moves into kind of moving through that first half kind of quick. And we can get back to individual tracks and talk about them in a bit more detail. But then it moves into track 5, which is actually the other track I want to play a sample from. So I'll just get the second sample in right here. And this one really stood out to me. This track really stood out to me as like kind of the most, I don't know why to me, it was like the most like kind of unsettling in a good way.
Yeah.
Because it has more pronounced, like a driving drums. And it's kind of one of the more like, to me, kind of beat drum driven tracks on the album versus like your album, which is nothing, like almost nothing but great beats with other like lo-fi elements over it. But it has these like in this track, back to Running for the Exit, track 5, against those drums, there's like these microtonal or just like fucked up melodies that are like kind of syncopated, like coming in and out over it. Just like a very classic, like creepy music trope. And they kind of like drift and they have like their timing against the drums kind of feels like it's drifting, and like the effects on them are coming in and out. So they kind of feel unsettled against the foundation of the drums. Which is really nice. And then the back half goes into like the horror aspect. So track 6, 7, and 8 are No Escape, Here Forever, and I Love Shopping. So now you're trapped in the mall. You just accepted that you love to shop.
You love to shop.
You love to shop.
Yeah, no, I really love track 5 too. It's just like, it reminded me like a really weird, like a horror movie carousel, like, that kind of like cyclic, spinning around and around, and who knows where it'll wind up. And that building up of intensity, you can almost sense the carousel's getting faster and faster, and who knows what will happen when it all comes crashing down. It's almost kind of like in track 7, like this turns into prog rock kind of at the end. Like it's
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Is it just because there's keys?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I described this batch of like track 6 and track 7 as late night lo-fi, but you're dying.
Oh, God.
I think is what I put in my notes, because it feels similar. Like No Escape, particularly track 6, feels
It's very menacing.
It's like menacing late night lo-fi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because it kind of has those like soft pads you can kind of hear under everything, but there's so many effects on top of it, which is why like the production characteristics are so important to this. And one of the reasons that we always stick up for like plunderphonics or sample-based stuff. I don't know if this is a sample or not, may not be, but I'm going to make the argument anyway that what you do to it, and this is obvious, but what you do to it is so important.
Yeah.
It would be a really interesting concept album, and maybe somebody has done it, but you grab a bunch of artists from different genres and they only get one sample basically. Ooh. But everyone has to like make a track and like all the ways in which one sample can be turned into like Mallsoft, late night lo-fi, classic vaporwave, slush wave, whatever. I think that would be like a fun experiment.
That would be super cool. I'd love
just to show off all the different production techniques. Cause it's one of those things that always kind of bugs me with like criticisms of anything kind of sample based.
Yeah.
I mean, not appreciating how much work goes into it.
Yeah.
You know,
unless it's barber beats. Hey-o.
Hey, even that, like, hey.
I mean, with that, it's the curation though, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We should always say.
Yeah. One thing I do like is like track 8, the way it ends kind of like oddly triumphant. It's kind of trying to be cheerful a little bit, you know? Now I'm reminded of like the Clowncore album, because like how we go from this, you know, that album's like manic, insane energy of jazz. And then just like, now it's cheerful. It's fine. You know, we're just trying to end on a high note. I really like the guitar of that track as well. So yeah, this is a really good treatment of like a lo-fi horror treatment of Mallsoft, which I didn't know I wanted, but I do. I quite enjoy it. Like Mallsoft is almost like a sound, you know, just like atmosphere, background sound, usually a very, you know, just drone minimalist. And this is like so much more than that. It's it invites active listening. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of little fun little production details in there, like a lot of groaning, like vocals processed to the point where they sound like wails and groans. Yes.
Like very down under there, more than just more than just your standard what you think of as like that kind of pitch shifted slow down vocal effect that you tend to hear. Overall, I definitely need to go check out all these Dead Mall mixes that these come from. It would be cool to have, I guess one thing would be cool in the YouTube description or whatever, to maybe have links to where some stuff is pulled from. I don't know, but I get it. I can go figure it out on my own by listening to all these other Dead Mall mixes. So I would also like to know a bit more about the artist. I guess they have a few other releases, of course. I tried to look up just the artist, but I'm not sure if I found them. There's like a Ghost Wave from New Zealand on Bandcamp, but they have just kind of a few singles that sound like they could be the same, like the kind of the art and stuff lines up a little bit, but it doesn't quite feel right. And I just, I don't know enough to say for sure.
Oh yeah. One thing is also, just as a random note, this is like one of the few artists or record labels we've approached. It doesn't like, they've specifically avoided Bandcamp. And so like when you buy things in the shop, they say cassette plus digital for, like Ghost Wave is $12. But like I wanted to look into getting a digital copy, and I don't want to get into like an Apple Music, just for one album. Right. So, maybe YouTube Music, but yeah, the cassette comes with a digital download, but I don't, I'm full up on cassettes. I don't want to.
They're definitely on Spotify and stuff too.
Yeah.
You can find them there. Like for instance, on the website for Ill Advised, that's where the artist links take you to. It's to like it's like a Spotify page of everyone associated with them. So I guess I could just click Ghost Wave there if I wanted to, I suppose. Maybe. Yes, they have 2 albums, kind of the same 2 that are on. Okay, I was just curious if they had other stuff that wasn't on Ill Advised, but they may not, or they may, as is the standard in these subgenres, they may have 15 projects and, release more stuff under a different name. I don't know.
Yeah.
No matter who they are, what they release stuff under, this album rules.
Yeah.
Dark Mallsoft is super fun. Definitely go check out the Dead Mall mixes. And I think we should move on to your album.
Opening from track 6, Spirit Box from Halloween Lo-Fi Annual Volume 2 by Dated, who is the Ill-Advised record label owner, creator, founder. And I feel like this is a really good representative of what Ill-Advised puts out, not only because Dated puts out a lot of the music of the record label, but it's sort of like the kind of aesthetic that they're going for. It's, you know, you get the lo-fi production style of, you know, crackle and static and lots of samples taken from horror media. This album, I think, is really, you know, perfect for people who want lo-fi but are tired of the more, you know, sentimental and sweet aesthetics of more popular labels. This is a very, I would call it a dark jazz influenced album. And I really like this blend of like lo-fi and dark jazz. And there's a lot to dig into because they sample from a lot of different movies, a lot of different sources. Like track 1 starts with Over the Garden Wall, which is a sort of horror, in the visual aesthetics of the album cover are influenced by that, which is like this 6-episode cartoon series that is now lost because Warner Brothers took it offline and there's no physical media of it, which is kind of got this fall harvest festival Grimm's fairy tale kind of vibe for it. And it's a very fun little cartoon series. But they also dig into movies like 70s movies. And I didn't look up every single, you know, sample, but like there's almost kind of like a formula where they start out with a sample, like a vocal sample taken from some horror movie or something. And then they go into the track. And, you know, I like that. Again, I'm reminded of that TikTok, like, oh, this music would be great if you just had some random sample from like an old movie. Yeah, I don't know why, but it would. So there's a lot of cool instrumentation. Like there's like, I think xylophones like on track 4, and you know, track 1 has the scuzzy guitar, you know, it's like this wah wah distortion, like of like Italian horror movie soundtracks, and really good beats. Like it's a really, really fun lo-fi album that is very spooky.
Yeah, I really liked it. Like you said, a lot of good beats, which kind of made sense because there's the like 90-minute video he did of how he makes beats for Dated projects. It was really cool. It has a lot of really good sense of like how to make stuff really shine in those drums. I think the samples are interesting. A lot of like movie samples, a lot of, I don't know where they're from, but some samples like almost get used to like accelerate mood. So track 2, Checked Out, has the sample of, you know, the King Edward Hotel, where if you check in, but no one ever checks out, basically something to that effect. That line gets repeated. And the King Edward Hotel is like a spooky hotel in Toronto, I think. I think it's like a classic like ghost tour type hotel. I think so. That makes sense that it's included in this. But that sample comes up like once at the beginning. And you're like, okay, we're just doing like a spooky hotel sample. But then it starts to appear more and more throughout the track. And it gets like repeated more frantically and with like a shorter intermission between samples, which I thought was interesting because it starts to be like, I get it. I get it. I get it. It's like makes you anxious, like to like very effective, I don't know, weaponizing of the sample there.
Weaponizing the sample. That's a good album name.
Weaponized samples. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Avalanches could do that as the next album.
But yeah, and you hear this throughout, and like, but it despite being darker, still does have all the best aspects of lo-fi, which is that it's just very enjoyable to just put on and just have playing and listen to. Like, it's an album that would really work. It would be a great party album.
Oh yeah,
if you're having a little Halloween party, like, and stop playing Monster Mash and shit. Put this on.
yeah, something original, something people actually gonna like, and they really go in referencing a lot of different like horror media soundtracks, you know, like I think track 7, I want to say it has like, it's sampling from Scooby-Doo. It has like a Scooby-Doo kind of beat to it. And I quite enjoy that. And they have tracks with like organs and of course, you know, interesting synths, and a lot of sections, tracks are very sax or horn forward sections, you know, which are pretty fun. And the plunderphonic stuff is, used very well in a lot of tracks. Like I really like track 15, Ghost Town, because of this plunderphonic singing used as an instrument, basically. So why don't we take a listen to that? And then back on track 13, there's like vocal samples being so low that they're basically indecipherable, kind of like mumbling as like a, background kind of drone element. And it's really fun. But yeah, God, I definitely want to use this for any kind of like spooky party theme. Like, oh man, I kind of want it to be fall now so I could start using this.
We just said why it's okay to do it now, Ross.
Oh, yeah,
you said in the intro.
right. Yeah.
You got to follow your own advice.
True.
I think another thing about the plunderphonics and samples is not just turning like the singing into an instrument, as we always talk about, but I feel like some of the same like post-processing techniques get applied to some instruments like horns and stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of times where I wish I'd written down specifically in my notes. I didn't, where it almost feels like the horn is getting kind of the vaporwave vocals treatment and then becomes like very creepy. So you kind of get this effect, but on like the saxophone and stuff, which I really liked. I thought that was fun, along with, like you've already talked about, a lot of the variety of other instruments that come in throughout. A lot of great synth loops, a lot of great like heavy organs and stuff. Like track 12, I think you're talking about.
Oh yeah, the organs. Yeah. Maybe perhaps too heavy on the organs. I don't know.
You think so? I don't know.
Can you go too heavy on the organ?
No.
Okay. Well, we answered that.
Potatoes, I believe that track is called. Yeah, I mean, you can probably go too heavy on organs. That one does not.
Yeah, fair enough. Also, like, there's some more interesting warbly, like, kind of synth pads, like on track 8. What I've learned from this episode, if anything else, that warbly equals horror.
It's also fun to say.
Warbly, yeah.
It's because it's very ill-defined. So you can kind of call almost anything warbly. And then it sounds like it's like, well, that's a fancy adjective, when really you just don't know another one for it. At least me. It's the trick of those fancy words.
It's true. God, I've been reading Cormac McCarthy. He uses such fancy words.
Oh, so many good fancy words, but so good.
Yeah, no, it's very good. I'm glad I'm reading it on the Kindle because I can like highlight a word and be like, what is this 19th century ass word? Okay. It's a type of cactus. Cool. All right. Oh, that's another type of cactus. Great. Thanks, Cormac.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
They're a prolific plant.
They have many species.
But as for this album, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else to say.
Yeah. I mean, it's still lo-fi. It's still got that like beat driven, it's hip hop, but it's got that, lo-fi, like sort of crackle and distortion. And it's more active and less background music than like chill hop would be. Chill hop on, you just put it on and you forget it's there until you turn it off. It's like, oh yeah, I was listening to music. Was it? This is music that you'll actually remember, but like,
yeah. I think the theming goes a long way in that, like having something more concrete for your brain to latch onto, because the thing with like other lo-fi is it's kind of like lo-fi for the sake of lo-fi. It's just sort of a little whimsical, a little nostalgic, maybe a little microtonal. And it's interesting, but I think having all of like the horror movie samples to latch onto is more engaging. The wide variety of instrumentation I've talked about and stuff. There's just more to latch onto there. And I think that goes a long way in kind of elevating it above what maybe people are starting to think of as lo-fi, since it can be so oversaturated, especially in like the royalty free, market. It's kind of overtaken the corporate ukulele, unfortunately, but I think this is a great example of like doing it really well. Thank you so much for listening. Definitely go check out everything that Ill-Advised Records is doing. I think they have a lot of cool variety. I think these albums are really good demos, as we said, of what they do, but there's so much there that you should really always go check it out on your own. Very, very active YouTube channel that has probably something for anybody who's into this type of music.
Yeah.
Continuing Record Label Month. Next episode, we're doing a label, Decaffeinated Records, which was one of the recommendations way back over the summer, I guess, when I asked Naoko Koed about Japanese Signal Wave for our Japanese Signal Wave episode. We'll set this aside and we'll do it as its own episode. And that time has come. So we're going to pick out some albums and talk about them. So definitely check home next week for more record label discussions, which I'm always excited for. But if you like what we do and you want to hear more of it, we do have a Patreon, Night Clerk Radio at patreon.com. We have 30-some bonus episodes, a really cool Discord community, and some other rewards that come and go. But really, those are the main two that are pretty enjoyable. If you're not into that, but into other social media for whatever reason, you can find us at Night Clerk Radio, basically anywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, kind of being the big three. nightclerkradio.com website. I guess Ross still maintains a Facebook. Anywhere. Just search for it. Wherever we always say, wherever finer podcasts are sold, that's probably where you can find it. Wherever you do choose to check it out, take a moment to rate, review, comment, anything like that. It really helps the algorithm tell other people to come check out our stuff. Lastly, we always advocate building community. I love our Discord community. They always post great stuff. I hope you have your own great communities and that you share what you like and make friends, enemies, and frenemies, and maybe Night Clerk Radio will be one of the interests you share. So thank you again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.